Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. It appears that a years-long mass shooting case here in Raleigh is starting to reach its end. I have WRAL news reporter Sean Gallagher joining me here now. Sean, to give people a broad view of this all, we're talking about the 2022 Hedingham mass shooting. 5 people were killed. The accused shooter in this situation is 15-year-old at the time, Austin Thompson. Now, this has been a long, dragged-out process, getting to the point where a trial would eventually begin. It was set to begin the beginning of February, but we have received court documents now detailing that it appears Thompson is intending to plead guilty. Can you go ahead and just update us on what we've learned, where things stand?
Yeah, so I guess just from some perspective, maybe a peek behind the curtain, I was on my way to the courthouse today because we were expecting that there was going to be an arraignment hearing with Austin Thompson. We weren't sure quite if he would be there or not. There were also some proceedings expected to go forward this week where they were going to go over motions that both sides were putting out there to try to figure out, basically the rules of the trial. That's
standard court stuff.
Exactly, all of that, with, less than 2 weeks to go until the trial was expected to start. But, as I was pulling up to the courthouse, we, caught wind that this new document was filed from Austin Thompson's attorney, this intent for them to plead guilty, which, was that's a big bombshell considering, because we had not heard any rumblings of this or any sort of indication that this was going to happen. But, it's a 3-paragraph, summation of why they are intending to, essentially put a close to this now, with Austin Thompson pleading guilty to all of the charges against him.
Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to have a graphic pop up here that's going to show this statement, but I'm going to go ahead and read it now because, like you said, it's pretty short. It's only a few paragraphs. Starting kind of in the second paragraph here. Austin was 15 years old when these events occurred. While the serious brain injury he suffered has made it such that Austin cannot explain why he committed this shooting, he has also accepted that he did this. He recognizes the deep pain he has caused the victims' families as well as his own family. After lengthy discussions with his attorneys about how a trial would proceed, he has decided he wishes to save the community and the victims from as much additional infliction of trauma as possible. Austin understands he can never change what happened, but he hopes that pleading as charged and moving into a sentencing hearing only will allow for the victims, the community, and his family to be spared a trial, and he hopes that the material presented at the sentencing hearing brings as much peace and closure as possible. That coming from the attorneys for Austin Thompson. So with that in mind, Sean, just when you read that for the first time, take us through the information there, what that reveals to you as someone who's covered this case.
Yeah, so from what I could discern in talking to other legal minds as it relates to this, it could be a number of factors. One, as long as this process has been, over 3 years, the process of a trial can be exhausting, not just for the people that are in the courtroom going through it every single day, likely a case that would have been, several weeks that they would have been going through this testimony, but it can be a lot for the community and especially the victims who lived through this that, again, 3 years is a long time. They're probably reliving it every single day, but it is a whole nother animal when you are, reliving it with such vivid detail in court. So, that statement says that, Austin Thompson doesn't want to re-traumatize anybody. Himself included, right? Like he went through this and, he had to experience this as well. And, that kind of goes to a motion or a notice that went out last week about Austin Thompson's health, that his attorneys, had put in this notice to accommodate for the upcoming trial. They say that he suffered a seizure, maybe within the last 2 weeks or so, and they think that it was stress-induced potentially from, having to relive everything from this, and they were requesting that he had a doctor in the courtroom for the trial in case he had another episode like that. So it gives you a little bit of an indication of what he's going through in that state, but the question I had was, that motion went out, or that notice went out less than or about a week ago. They were just a week ago trying to request accommodations to go forward with this very long, lengthy trial. So what happened in the last 7 days that made them say, you know what, wrap it up. We're just going to plead guilty here. And, it could be his state of health. It could be that he wants to, end this process so people don't have to deal with the re-traumatization of living through this again. We don't know. I've reached out to his attorney. I've reached out to the district attorney. I guess just a caveat here, this is a notice. The judge still needs to formally accept this. So, none of the legal people involved in this are going to say anything until the ink's dry. So at this point, we really don't know, what sparked this notice to be filed today. But we do know that he intends to take full responsibility for that tragic day.
This, you mentioned kind of the next steps in that legal proceeding. For those who are watching, for those who are listening, we are recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So in the event something changes, be sure to check out WRAL.com. When will that be accepted? What are the next steps in where this all goes now that we've had this intent to plead guilty to the charges? Yeah,
we're still trying to get a concrete answer for that. But from what I've been able to gather so far, Wednesday and Thursday of this week, there were these hearings to go over the motions to prepare for the trial. From what I've gathered from the people that I've talked to, they're still going forward with those hearings. We don't know if it's going to be the same context of what we thought previously, that these hearings essentially could turn into a plea hearing followed by a sentencing. In the attorney that I talked to, who has no affiliation to the case, but he's tried a number of criminal cases, he tells me, in relation to this case that, the number of victims that are involved, that when they go through victim impact statements, which are what they do before the judge formally sentences, somebody for the crimes, where they can, express themselves, say how this has impacted them to try to, help the judge understand what they should put down as a sentence. This attorney tells me, this could be days of victim impact statements. So, it feels like a lot like a hurry up and wait today on Tuesday that, we got this information. It was brand new and, very surprising. We're trying to figure it all out. And then it could be a very slow process from here still, as, all of those victims likely, I would imagine, want to have their voices heard about how this has affected them and what they want to see done to Austin Thompson. And, at this point, we don't know when sentencing will happen, but Wednesday will be when we really figure out for certain how all of this will pan out.
Surprising, I think, is the word that we keep going back to there, because from the documents, from the legal preparation, like the thought was that this was going to be a very long, drawn-out process. Like you said, this has had a massive impact on the Hedingham community in Raleigh, the family, the victims of those that were impacted, the 5 that were killed. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that continues from here. I know we don't know what's next with the sentencing hearing or anything along those lines, but is there anything else, just from a legal perspective, next up in the docket that people should know as they look at this case?
Yeah, from the attorney that I spoke to, Chris Detweiler, a local criminal defense attorney, again, no affiliation to this case, just his experience. He said, his eyes are on the sentencing now. That essentially, what he believes is that, if a suspect in a case is willing to plead guilty, likely going to be accepted. The district attorney's office not really going to probably put up any hurdles to that. I mean, it essentially makes their case easier. But from there, the sentencing is just kind of deciding, what punishment he gets. So when talking to Chris about this, he said he wants to see how that all transpires. It's going to be the victim impact statements. It's going to be a lot of heavy testimony there. And then just seeing what, Judge Ridgway in this case decides is the appropriate punishment for Austin Thompson.
And one thing, correct me if I'm wrong here, but one thing we do know is that he could not receive the death penalty because of his age. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's a federal law that, for somebody who allegedly killed 5 people, you would imagine that they would be up for the death penalty. But because Austin Thompson was 15 at the time, federal law prevents the death penalty from being used in cases.
A lot still to go, but this Tuesday proving to be a very pivotal moment in what was such a huge, sad, tragic event for Raleigh. That is WRAL News reporter Sean Gallagher. Sean, Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I'm Luis Fernandez. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. If you are watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.